All right. All right. Well, thank y'all so much for jumping on tonight. We are going to go ahead and get this thing kicked off. I am so excited to have this interview tonight. Me and Mr. Jim Gonsoulin have been talking for a little bit, and I'm excited for. Well, one, he was one of my first impactful, like outside of having my mentor who shared the Juice Plus business with me, and also just started to pour into me as a mentor in general, which is what I hope to get out of more tonight is mentorship and what I've been able to gain from both of these gentlemen. Mr. Jim was that first next guy that that allowed me to, see how much was there for myself and to be able to see that everyone has that potential and that ability and hopefully you can kind of gain that tonight. I titled our interview in this message with a quote that Mr. Jim had said to me before we had left the first time we had met, before we had left meeting each other. And it was, he told me, I'm saying it, and every time I say it a little differently, but it really went, Patrick, just look at me. And it was literally right before we're gonna hear the story, but it was right before I got back on my motorcycle and I drove away from my first training camp as far as learning about business and building a business. And he said, Patrick, don't look up for the next 5 years and watch where you are. And then after those 5 years. And that stuck with me and it still sticks to me to this day. I am about 3 years into building my own business. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just thank Mr. Jim. And first off, I wanted to save it for you, but I wanted to ask you just maybe if you would tell us who you are, where you come from, and just let's pick up from there and start the conversation there.
Well, Patrick, thanks for having me on. It's one of the joys of our business. We can get together as a community. And we don't use that word loosely. Here we are having met 3 years ago at a boot camp. Kerry and Mickey said, Jimmy, we got a young guy we'd like to room with you. I said, bring him on. Said, he's coming on a motorcycle. I said, good. So we got to meet then. And just to share my background, I actually went to school at a little town called Lauraville near New Iberia. Class A school, played quarterback in football and was an athlete in several different sports. Went on to play college football at McNeese State University. I'm hailing my alma mater here. Got a full ride scholarship. Today that would be worth about $100,000. Back then it was worth about $5,000, but I took it. Got a college degree, and just my first example in what I now understand as real life. My dad, who was about 5'7", weighed about 130 pounds. At that time, I'm 6'3", 220. He shakes my hand. He says, congratulations. This is my graduation night. Congratulations. We now know you can learn. What you going to do tomorrow? Right? It's called real life. So we're talking about real life tonight. Just to let you know, I got out of college. I got a job. I work for the TRW International, which is the major conglomerate, but I worked for the oil field division of TRW, Mission Drilling Products, for about 8 years. I then got a job with Caterpillar, which is the largest heavy equipment manufacturer in the world. Worked with them for 4 years. And Kerry can remember these days. I used to walk into the meetings when I worked for Caterpillar and I was in heavy equipment sales. I'd get up at 5:30 in the morning. I'd be running by 7. Not physically running, but running by making calls. Get in about 7 o'clock, do quotes till 10:30, get up in the morning, next morning, do the same thing. So I did that for about 4 years. And I learned about this business and I started out part-time back in 1990. And I decided once I understood the strength of the company, Patrick, that was really important for me, the strength of the company. At that time, they were 19 years old. Had never missed a paycheck. That was pretty impressive to me. Here I was having worked with 2 international conglomerates, TRW and Caterpillar. And I work now with a company that had not missed a paycheck in 19 years. That was very important to me. So as a man, I was looking for stability, right? To have an income. What I now know is I'm in control of my income. not TRW, not Caterpillar. So I enjoy that option now. And when you and I met, what I was looking for from my days in sports and my work with Carrie and Mickey is, what was your talent? What were you good at? At that time, I don't know if you remember, you were training for a bodybuilding competition.
I was.
Okay, and you were eating a very specific diet. Even at this boot camp where we had food galore, Patrick was focused on his diet. So Patrick, little do you know, I was watching you to give you that advice, because Carrie and Mickey had coached me that way. You know, Jimmy, you got a good focus. You got an athletic background. If you focus on the things you need to do and stay focused, like you did in athletics, Patrick, you got the same background. You played linebacker. If all of a sudden you watching the wideouts, you're going to get run over. You got to watch the running backs, right? Watch the guards, the tackles, and the running backs. So what I saw in you was your ability to focus. So when I said that to you, it was knowing what I knew, but what Carrie and Mickey had taught me as my mentors. Mm-hmm. If you focus and you stay focused and do it for a period of time, that's where I came up with that quote. And I've shared that with a lot of people. And I think after 3 years, you're 3 years into it, you got some pretty good options.
Yeah, and definitely, it's definitely changed.
Good options, right?
No, I wanted to ask you, Mr. Jim. I wanted to bring this up. This was actually funny that you said that you. I'm glad you brought it up. But when you said Laurelville, I didn't even realize it until we started talking about it. But Laurelville was actually right down the bayou from where my parents grew up, and that being a small town, like I found that to be so cool. And that was one of those things that was just awesome to see how this community is and being a part of it, and knowing that, you know, there's people just like where I come from or where my family comes from doing this. So it was a fun thing to see. Also, you started talking about sports, and I wanted to kind of hit on that a little bit more, because that's something that I could relate to. And I think a lot of guys can relate to. I think a lot of us, and I don't want to be wrong, or I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I think a lot of us played sports growing up being guys. That's just a thing, especially me coming up. Most of my friends played sports at some time or other. But one, Mr. Jim, I wanted to ask you, can you kind of go into your sports career just a little bit? I think that'd be something interesting to know, to hear a little bit. And maybe how did you take your career as in sports, and what maybe are some strengths or some things that you gain from sports that might translate into what we do and just business in general, you know, being a man, you know, working out in the world.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of great analogies from my experience in sports, and maybe you guys can relate. You know, my first mentors, not knowing it at the time, were my coaches. They were my mentors. You know, when I played high school ball, I was a quarterback in high school. When I got to college, it's like, you know, you did pretty well, you had a little success, and all of a sudden you're back to square one. Got to McNeese, I was on the scout squad. That's a kind way of saying you got to work your way back up. Every Monday we'd have a scrimmage. They called it the Dust Bowl. It was all those players that didn't play in the game, we scrimmaged on Monday. We had a couple other names for it, but I won't say them on this call. You know, my point was I played a whole different position. Carrie and I laugh about this. You know, I was a quarterback in high school, so I could see everything. And I went to tight end where I could see nothing but dirt. So I had to relearn. I knew my high school game, but I didn't know the college game. So there's the first example of mentors. Who do I listen to? My coaches in college, right? They knew what I needed to do. So the analogy there, Patrick, is you may be in a background, or you may be in a business or a work that's not this business. So listen to somebody that's been successful in it as your mentor, somebody who can coach you in being successful, because they know the pathway. The distinction here is from traditional work, I'll call it, is that this is our business. We have to learn how to be an entrepreneur. And that's a whole new game, just like going from high school to college is a whole new game. My best analogy for the competitiveness of those different levels is going from high school to college. They turn up the blender 2 speeds. You might be a big guy on campus in high school, but you get to college, all of a sudden you're a grunt again, right? Got to go back through that process. And I had an opportunity to go to Pittsburgh and Tampa after that. Well, you want to dial it up about 5 notches from college. And I was very fortunate. I watched a documentary on Terry Bradshaw the other night.
Wow.
When I was at Pittsburgh, I went there as a free agent. I was there in 1977, between the second and third Super Bowl win in the 70s. Probably not the place to go back in those days, looking at it from a business standpoint, but I went there, right? I ran the 40 in 4.6 in college. Not lightning speed, but for my size, pretty good. There were defensive linemen running 4.6 at Pittsburgh. Defensive linemen, right? So my point is, I had to learn to compete at that level. Who was I going to listen to? Again, my coaches and more experienced players. Although it's competitive, everybody's going out for the same job. There's guys there that are willing to help you if you're willing to listen, right? And that's what I've learned from Kerry and Mickey, how to be a good student. And that's what we all have to be successful in life. Be willing to humble yourself. As a man, sometimes that's not easy to do.
Yeah.
Ego gets in the way, right? You talked about a lot of us have played sports. You know, you get a little prominence, you get a little success, all of a sudden, maybe you think you're something. You know, and Kerry and I did a call about 3 years ago. And he said, Jimmy, I'm going to ask you the tough questions. And he did. And guess what the key to being successful was? The most important thing: mental fitness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, look back at those days, even at Pittsburgh and Tampa. I was at Tampa when Doug Williams was drafted. I have a separated shoulder to show evidence of trying to catch one of his passes. Silly me, with no pads, I dove for the pass. Not smart, right? Trying to make the team. But I got to see the level of competitiveness, and I got to see that when you apply yourself, you can be successful, but you have to be willing to apply yourself. I.e., Patrick, don't look up for 5 years. Mm-hmm. Give it 5 years. I had a 5-year scholarship at McNeese. I had 5 years to earn my degree. I had to go through that process. And guess what? I was fortunate to have a scholarship, and most young people today are paying to learn. We earn while we learn. That's a big distinction in what we do. Mm-hmm. So that allowed me to learn about the importance of mentorship. You know, and in our business, it's a very unique business style. If you don't understand entrepreneurism, there's a lot of opportunities. You can read Kerry's book. You see it back here, Dreams, Fairy Tales, and Miracles. Great story about his experience with his mentors. His original mentors were his grandparents, who he was raised by. And then there's another great book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you don't know about entrepreneurism, read this book. It'll help you understand that.
Absolutely.
So I hope that answers your question.
No, absolutely. And I love that. I wasn't even thinking you were going to go with mentorship, but it's by far one of the, I see it every day that, like, that's something that, like, you know, with you, Mr. Jim, and what you poured into me from that weekend was the fact that we need mentorship. I think that was a big, just main idea that I learned that weekend. And that's something that I found as my strength, and something that you also taught me was, like, learn your strengths, build your strengths as big as you can, because they're going to make your weaknesses go away, or at least they're going to be pretty minimal. And that's one thing that throughout my life I've always tried to do. And I think it's really played a big deal. And I just thank you for giving me that, and just reminding me that, hey, we got to learn from somebody. Just pick the right ones, the ones who have walked the walk, who are doing what you want to do, and who are the most successful at it, and watch them and follow every single footstep. But no, so what I wanted to do, and you've kind of hit it some more, but I would love for you to go into what you meant, like some more about put your head down for 5 years. Okay, we've kind of talked about, but what were you telling me that weekend? Can you expand some more on that? To just because I think I got it all that weekend, and I want to be able to relay that to people. What did you? Because we spent 2 nights together, and I remember I thought I was like, I mean, I was up reading, and I would turn over and I'd be like, Mr. Jim, what'd you think about this? And I'd turn back over and I'd read a book, because that was, I mean, I was just immersed in it. But and I felt like I annoyed you that weekend, but you were just up there with me every night, and then you'd wake up at 6 a.m. and I'd be like, how's this guy moving? And I just saw this work ethic. But what did you mean? Just kind of go into it a little bit more, because I think we haven't been able to fully, because that's what I wanted to give tonight, was that phrase, put your head down for 5 years and don't look up. Like with maybe this business or just in general, expand on that a little bit more, so that way the guys can hear your thoughts.
Well, Carrie and Mickey have taught me this. And again, I'll go back to my athletic career. You learn to identify what people are good at. I go back so many times to my experience in high school. I don't know where I got this or which one of my coaches imparted this to me, but my job was one thing: 6 points. Get the ball across the line. As long as it's legal, it counts. It's 6 points. I had a running back in high school. This kid was a horse. I mean, 25 carries, he'd just be warming up. Patrick, you played football. You know what that means, right?
Yeah.
He had 1,800 yards his junior year in high school, my senior year. And look, I would gauge him about every 10 plays. You okay? And I could tell by his response if he still had gas in his tank, right? If he was getting tired, I'd run the ball myself or give it to the other back. My point is about not looking up for 5 years. Kerry hosted a talk about probably 15, maybe 20 years ago with Coach Gail Hatch. He's legendary.
I would love to be there.
He's legendary in Baton Rouge. He was Olympic powerlifting coach for at least 2 Olympics that I know about. It might have been 4. Okay. He's about 6'3", and he carries this big old stick. You look like Moses up there, right? And he kind of got a little drawl. He said, what I've discovered in my life is 80% of success is just showing up. When I got to college, these were the 3 instructions we got. Don't miss class, don't miss practice, and don't get in a fight. As long as you did those 3 things, you had a shot. So stay focused, don't look up, listen to your mentors. If you don't know the business and they know the business, why wouldn't you listen? Give it 5 years. My degree, I took 5 years to earn. I didn't get my sheepskin until I got through. So give it time. People expect success too quickly sometimes. And in today's technology, it can go faster than that. But if you give it 5 years, that's giving it a good effort. I can't tell you the number of guys. I started with 39 freshmen at McNeese, 39 football scholarship freshmen. We ended up with 10. First year, some of those all-state guys from East Texas, those big schools, they weren't starting. They couldn't deal with it. They went home, left a full scholarship and went home. Those that stuck it out were those that ended up doing well. So the point about staying focused, I saw something in you from watching you that weekend, your discipline, your diet. You were reading, you were asking quick. You thought you were annoying me. I'm thinking, this guy's, he's ready. He just don't know what he's got here. So if he'll pay attention to Kerry and Mickey as mentors, he has a chance to succeed. But it's up to you. It's up to each of us. It's still up to me 30 years into it. Kerry's my mentor. I mastermind with him every Monday morning. And I get those questions just like you do, Patrick. You know, what are you doing to improve yourself? What books are you reading? You know, my dad said that night, Carrie says it in a different way. We now know you can learn what you're going to do tomorrow. So that part about staying focused, don't look up for 5 years. The last part of what I told you was, if you do, you're going to have some options. And options are good because you get to pick the options. Carrie says often, it's not the choices we make, it's the decisions we make. So I hope that helps in regard to clarifying what you were talking.
And I kind of looked down for a second because I was writing some stuff down and thoughts that you said that I wanted to kind of grab and hold real quick. You know, well, first off, you were talking about, you came in with 39 freshmen in sport that all had scholarship, and there was 10 left. And I think back and I love my dad to death. My dad's given me every bit of things that you saw in me. And I love that. And he always shares this, and my dad always shares this with me. So I know he would share it in a similar light. But my dad got a scholarship to play baseball at McNeese a few years after you in 1982. And he went, and within 2 weeks, he saw that he was going to be redshirted, and he took that as an ego hit and stopped the team, or left the team. And I just think back, and he tells me all that. He tells me that so much, and he's told me that story so many times in my life. And I gave up my want to play sports, and I'm thankful I did. But I think back to, like, I don't want to just pass up an opportunity with 4 years of that opportunity of a scholarship in front of you that you can set up, and especially at college, to be able to go and get it for free. You know, a lot of people are paying out the wazoo to go to college. I mean, I went 2 years and I still paid a bunch of money, but no, I just thought that was a great thought to think that, and how it relates to me and what you just said. And that hit home right there. But you also say the phrase you've said 3 times, I think now, you said, now we know you can learn, what are you going to go do tomorrow? And a way that I'm guessing, and I think this is what you mean as well, but the way Mr. Carey would say it is like, knowledge is power. It's great. You know how to get the knowledge. Applied knowledge is actually the real power, going and actually applying it. So those are some things that I just wanted to grab a hold of real quick and kind of give the thoughts that, or just expand on that real quick. But no, you started to hit on after the 5 years. And I know that you said that knowing that you went through those 5 years of putting your head down with obviously a huge career with Caterpillar, obviously doing something that was very important, you know, making money, probably a living that was satisfying what you needed, but you saw a vision, and then the 5 years happened, or however much time it took. What were those options, or what was the future that you saw? What is something that you told me that I started to look forward to, as far as like, okay, I'm really going to sit down and I'm going to keep my head down for those 5 years. What have you been able to benefit from that work?
I think 3 things, if I can remember this, remind me there's 3, I may forget. The first one was when I was with Caterpillar, I went through a 6-month training program. We lived in Reserve, Louisiana in an apartment, 3 trainees in 1 apartment. We would work during the daytime. We would study at night, often till 1 in the morning. We'd go to class in the afternoon. That was every day. I'd drive home on the weekends. I would drive an old Pontiac station wagon. I'd drive home on the weekends. I'd go back on Sunday night. I did that for 6 months. So what is that? That was like training camp, right? I was fortunate to get a job in Lafayette. My point there is, when I started with this business part-time, I can remember Carrie and Mickey painting the benefit package picture. What's the benefit package if you reach the top position? And I did some research, because in our training, we got to work in all the different departments. And one of my, I'll call it a blessing, is my ability to relate to people. I was raised with 4 sisters. So I learned how to navigate all that. You know what I mean, right?
God bless you. God bless you, Mr.
Right.
Jim.
Like Hayden raising his hand. You know, my point is this: I got to be related with some of the people in HR. I'd started with this part-time and I still knew those people. I was stationed in Lafayette with Caterpillar, real fortunate. So I called one of them one day. I said, listen, you probably can't tell me everything, but the general manager, what's his benefit package look like? It wasn't anything close to what we could get as an NMD. And I want to get into detail, but we're our own business. Nobody can fire us. Nobody can lay us off. And we got a benefit package that rivals any corporate position I've ever seen. Okay. Second thing is, I saw an opportunity to create my own future. Where if I was going to work from 5:30 in the morning till 7 at night, I was going to do it for me. I'll give you an example of what some of the options are, Patrick. Today, just today, it's a gorgeous day here where I live, right? The weather's perfect. My granddaughter is taking her wedding pictures at Live Oak Gardens in Jefferson Island. My wife walks in my office. She says, 3 o'clock. She said, Morgan's taking pictures. I'd like to go, but I'm kind of tired. Would you drive me? Guess what I did? Stopped what I was doing, took 2 hours and went with my wife to be with my granddaughter to get her wedding pictures. I was the only grandparent or the only grandfather there. You think I'm going to remember that? Do you think she's going to remember that? Why did I do that? Because I could. I didn't have to clock out and have to ask any permission. Okay. The third part is, what legacy am I leaving my kids and grandkids? This business is an asset. My wife has her own position. She gets a check and I get a check. Mickey and Carrie in the same position. You and Victoria in the same position. We're creating a business that's an entity. What can happen for our children? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a other profession, but I can leave that business to them. It's an asset that I can leave to them as a legacy. So I looked at those things for the future. I couldn't do that with Caterpillar. Great company. I couldn't do that with TRW. International, both of them international companies. And guess what? All the people we had in the community tonight, we had a Zoom at 7 o'clock with Steve and Duana. People from all over the country. We had a couple of people from Canada. That's all our community. That's all our friends. I don't know of another environment that exists like that. We don't take it for granted, but especially in the world today, it's very nice to have that connection, those relationships. So those are the three areas that I really looked at. When I talked about options, Patrick, I could see that. Carrie and I laugh about this often. If we had had this in our 20s,
well,
especially.
Can I stay with that real quick? Because that was my next question. Is I wanted to ask you, because you looked at me, you said, Patrick, the what I get to do, I pinch myself every day. And I was like, okay, all right. This guy, I don't even know how old you were, but I was like, okay, this guy's in his 60s. I'm trying to relate. And he was like, Patrick, if I was 22 years old right now, and I was looking at this, and if I knew what I know and am living now, and I could give to you, I wish I could. What, like, could you put that into words for the people watching this?
Well, as men, a good question. As men, I think we can and often need to be more direct with each other. You know, to paint the picture of what I see, you can't experience what Carrie and I have experienced. But if we're good mentors, we'll share with you what's available. It's your job to choose it and to choose the path. Now, look, it's not all uphill. I mean, it's not all straight up. You're going to have some downs, you know, like in football. My son was fortunate to get a scholarship too. I was fortunate to go and visit the school that he went to with him. We woke up on Sunday morning. We had this great picturesque window at Wofford College in South Carolina where the Panthers train. Okay. I mean, gorgeous field, gorgeous campus. He said, Dad, what do you think I ought to do? Where do you think I should go? He had two other offers to smaller schools. I said, well, you know what? You're going to be the one waking up, being at practice at 7 in the morning in that wet grass down there, cold, sleepy. So it's not going to be me, it's going to be you. So you have to make the choice. You have to make the decision where you want to come. Now I wanted him to go there, I didn't, but I couldn't tell him that.
Tell
Right?
somebody what to do.
He said, well, I think I want to come here. I said, well, I think that's a good decision. But I let him make the decision. What I did was I told him about my experience. My dad let me make that decision. So what I saw in you was you had the potential. Our job that weekend is to paint the picture for you. So if you see something and you choose to be part of the team, you know, my 39 cohorts at McNeese, not all of them stayed. Guess what? We won the conference with the 10 that stayed. First time in school history. I'm very proud to say UL never beat us in my 5 years at McNeese. That was our competition, right?
That's great.
You know, I'm just saying that we played as a team. We didn't have any superstars, but we had a community.
Mm-hmm.
We were picked to finish, little history here. We were picked to finish 5th in the conference out of 7. We won the conference and we won the Independence Bowl, the first ever Independence Bowl. Nobody can ever say that except us.
Mm-hmm.
So what I saw in you, Patrick, was what Kerry has taught me over the years. Look for desire, look for talent. Let them see the picture. And if they choose to, teach them how to do what we do. And our business is very simple. Another quick analogy, our toughest defense in college was our own. Because they'd see it every day.
Mm-hmm.
We had a guy, a strong safety in our team. He could tell you what play we were running, every play. Why? Because he saw it every day. So if we could succeed against that, we could succeed against anybody. It's a very simple business we're in, Patrick. People complicate it too much. Kerry always says, what part don't you understand? The fruits, the vegetables, or the 41 studies? You know, and if you use that simplicity, it can be a phenomenal business. And whatever gender, whatever age, that's what I really like about it. Mm-hmm. You're not limited. We had people on tonight like yourself in their 20s. We had people that are our age or older. It's a very unique opportunity. And I noticed something tonight. Nobody was wearing a mask. I like that part.
Yeah, that's good. That's funny. That is great. That is great. Well, no, I mean, Mr. Jim, thank you so much. That's exactly like some of the things, you know, that I just felt you basically give me a big old, like, not really, but really a nice big old hug the whole weekend and just say like, dude, you're in an awesome spot and I see so much for you. I hope you can get that. And you've got so many strengths for you. And that's how I feel for a lot of, especially if anyone has said yes at that point, if they have joined the business, they get it. It's just a matter of like what you said, putting your head down for 5 years, listening to mentors, listening to your coaches, and doing the work and facing the ups and downs. And I love the sports analogy because I was a baseball player too. So going in a slump happened, you know, or having a losing streak happened, or, you know, having some difficulties as a team happened, you know, and not everyone that's listening would think about it this way, but it's exactly some of the things that happen in the Juice Plus business. But if you stay focused, it happens. And like you said, 3 years in, I've already seen options open up, and I'm excited for the future. And I thank you from day one, you know, pouring into me in that way. So I hope everybody felt that. But Mr. Jim, do you have any final closing words or any thoughts that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I do, Patrick. And thank you for being willing to be open enough, you know, because you came in with whatever experience you had in life, in sports, and as a young man, you know, you had a little bit more hair back then. You know, your presentation was a little different, but I saw a lot in you. And as an athlete, you know, I learned this from Kerry. Kerry's always learning. And that's something that when your mentors are still learning, guess what? It's our job to be those mentors to other people in our group and be the example.
Mhm.
That's one thing about our business. You get up and get to prove yourself every day. So your willingness to, first of all, be open enough as a young man to consider all that you were learning. And secondly, your application of the knowledge you learn and continuing to be willing to learn is what's led you to success. And even doing this Zoom, being a leader for your team, being an example for other young people. You have it focused on men, which I really like, and the opportunities equal for anybody, any gender, any age. And that's really what presents the real opportunity to what we're doing.
Mhm.
And what better business to be in than health and an opportunity to show people how to generate some wealth.
Mhm. That's
So
awesome.
glad to have you, glad to be on with you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you again, Mr. Jim. Well, I appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and stop this real quick.